Well, now let's take a closer look at another measure in this week's Queen's speech, and it's one that will affect tens of thousands of people here in the East Midlands. It included proposals to cap care costs for the elderly and to give more support for people who care for their loved ones at home. Des Coleman's been finding out what it means for carers here.
I'm at Crossroads Care in Nottingham, and I'm going to talk to two people who will really feel the effects of the new changes in the care system. Crossroads Care provides help and support to over 600 non-paid carers in the community. Patricia, hi. Now, I know you were caring for your mum, now it's your dad. Christine, you're the CEO of this place. What are the hard facts when it comes to the care system?
There are almost 7 million carers in the UK at the present time. They're people who are caring for a friend, a relative at home, and that individual has some sort of temporary or permanent disability. Those carers are saving our economy around about £119 billion a year.
The care bill, the new care bill, is that a positive?
It is a positive, yes. Up until now, the assessment process and a needs assessment, which then results in allocation of services, has always been about the person with a disability. What this bill does is it shifts that focus to ensure that the carer is equally assessed in that process. And I think one of the biggest issues that we have is to try and raise awareness to the point where these carers know that they are entitled to have some support in the role that they're undertaking in looking after their relatives.
If people are on their own and haven't got that help or support or don't know where to go to fetch it, if they haven't got a good family network, if they haven't got friends and neighbours who rally round and offer, you wouldn't cope.
If there is one more thing that the government can do to help somebody like yourself, Christine, what would that be?
The easy answer to that question is more money. Of course it is, but for many years, the health service and social care services have not really worked in partnership together, and they certainly are starting to do so now. And it's very clear that when all health professionals, whether that be in social care, in the community or in the hospitals, when they come together and look at the provision of health and care services, there are innovative ways of providing care services that are much more cost effective.
Have the government done enough?
I think they're trying to go in the right direction, but what really worries me is that it's all right having legislation in place, but then there's the question of how you fund that. Obviously, if you're going to meet carers' needs, as proposed in the bill, the money's got to come from somewhere to fund the ways of supporting those carers. We're in a recession, everything's being cut, so where are they going to get the money from to actually implement the bill and to put it in place to actually make a difference?
Lots of questions there. Patricia, of course, is someone who has cared for both her parents. Now, under this bill, she and others will have the legal right to help from the council. Isn't that something that she should have had and others should have had anyway?
This is such a hugely important bill. I think that common sense has prevailed. I think all these complex, we've got 60 years of legislation, over a dozen acts of parliament. At long last, it can sort of all be put together so the carers and the caring people who are being cared for are on an equal footing when deciding these really personal, important matters.
It's incredibly complex and it's still very confusing. Will the new care bill help that?
Absolutely. I really do have confidence in that. But I do think now as parliamentarians we'll now have a period of time to go through the detail of that bill. We need to examine it because I think it's pretty cross-party that this is a sensible way forward. But now the devil's in the detail. We've got to get this right so on a practical basis the Act of Parliament can be implemented and can work.
With your brief, Liz, you must be pleased at least that it's been pushed up the political agenda.
Yes, we actually, the former Labour government initiated the review of the legislation that's now led to this bill, and I'm determined to make sure older and disabled people and their family carers get the best possible deal out of it. But this legislation on its own will not solve the desperate crisis that is engulfing care in this country. I think we need a much bigger and bolder response. And the lady was saying there about how can you make sure carers get the support they need. In parts of the country where they've genuinely joined up the NHS and social care services in one system, which we are proposing, one single new care system
So that's
covering
what you
the
think
NHS.
is the bigger, bolder approach
It
then?
is, and what
More
they've done
joined
is
up
they've
thinking.
realised if they help carers do what they want to do, which is look after their loved one, it's better for them, the person they're caring for, and in the end it saves money.
Well, it's saving money at the moment, isn't it? Because let's face it, without families caring in the way that they do for their loved ones at home, you'd be a lot worse off as a government, wouldn't you? Because they're doing it themselves voluntarily.
And they get precious little help and support in return at the moment.
And what this bill is trying to do is get the right balance, because yes, family members are involved in caring, of course they are, but the government, and then down to, as it's devolved down, what local authorities are providing, it's got to be the correct practical care. And as I said before, this is over 60 years there's been legislation, dozens of acts of parliament. We just need to now
But it is very
batten
difficult
down
when
and get it
local
right.
council budgets are being cut by a third for them to provide care and support for people who need the care, let alone for the carers. And I don't think the government realises the sheer scale of the crisis that's happening. There is a way forward, one system that looks at people's health and social care needs
It's just
together.
hard to know where to go in the first place to
It's not
access
hard.
the care.
It's not. I mean, it is hard at the moment. We should have one point of access, one phone number, one source of information, so people don't have to tell their story many different
What's
times.
also confusing is that, you know, we've talked about a cap, we've heard that it could be £72,000, but it wasn't exactly spelled out in the Queen's speech. So is there going to be a cap? Is it going to be 72,000?
I think, well, that's the figure that I've heard. I mean, the point is that is why now we have, over the next weeks and months, we have detailed debate now about the detail of everything that's been in the Queen's speech.
But people
and I
really
think that
need to know when
do.
that
If
they're
care,
gonna
when the
play-
government steps
I mean, the
in to
thing
help
about
them,
this-
don't they?
the
Because at
point
the
about
moment they're
this-
faced with
That's the
selling their
figure that-
homes.
But that's
The point about this cap, first of all, it doesn't cap your full care costs, because if you pay more for your own care, it only covers the equivalent of a local council rate. And the way that it works is the first person to benefit won't be until 4 or 5 years into the next parliament. That's a long way away, and in the meantime people are suffering. The government needs to take action now to tackle the real crisis in care.
The government, I mean, if we can talk about timing, but it's probably not that constructive, because I mean, I would say that the last government had 13 years to progress this matter. There was insufficient. At least now we are getting on with it.
Well,
It
we
is
are
going to
where we are
we
now,
are.
and this is urgent, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
why
we
you
didn't
this is
cut
why
local
this
council
has been,
budgets
this
by
has
a
been
third.
driven up
In
to
the
the top of
Queen's
the political
speech,
agenda.
absolutely.
We didn't
That's
cut
right.
local council budgets by a
Will
third.
this bill clear all these confusions up once and for all? The idea that people have to sell their homes to pay for their own care,
will
that's
still
still
have to
so
do that.
confusing.
They will still have to do
I
that.
think
Just hold
what
on
concerns me, you know, is that it's very easy to sort of frighten people and start saying that things are still going to be just as bad. I don't personally think that that's the most constructive approach. We've got to have the detail on this.
Well, they,
from
but
the
they
headlines
want the
that
detail
we've-
from you. They
Yes.
want to know what you're going to be doing.
And as I've said, that's why we're going to be debating it at great length in the House of Commons, and I very much look forward to doing that. I mean, the
what
Secretary
about the money?
of
Will there be more
Health-
money forthcoming?
The Secretary of State for Health has made it very clear he's looking at a higher cap than was originally recommended, and that, but you know,
I don't think that, you know, most people in average homes in this region aren't going to think that £72,000, you know, they're still going to have to pay up to that. And
But
when
not
they
necessarily
realise,
pay up for that. This is what-
realise that they
Well, we
also
still
have to
don't
pay
know for
their
sure
health-
what it's going to be, do
Well,
we? We
that's
haven't
what
got
they're-
the detail. The
that's-
devil's in the
that's what
detail, you
they've
say,
said,
but we
yeah.
haven't got the
But
detail
people
yet.
need to
Okay.
plan.
Well, listen, Christine Alexander, the Chief Executive of Crossroads Care in Nottingham, who we saw earlier, has a question for both of you on another care issue. So let's have a look at what she's got to say.
There are 700,000 young carers in this country, and they're not mentioned in the bill. What can be done for them to ensure that they're protected from the caring role?
So what can you do for these young carers that she's just mentioned?
Yeah, I'm really pleased that this issue's come up. I think this is an issue that's going to have cross-party, more involvement about it, and it's definitely going to be raised
You think
when we
it's
go
going
through.
to have, or
well,
it
I
will?
certainly be
Yeah.
raising it. I'm very happy to do so. I've just been on the Children and Families Bill when we've been looking at the children who need extra support in schools for themselves. I think the voice of children and their contribution in society is now coming more to the fore. This is a very important issue, and I very look forward to raising it with the Secretary of
for
State.
these young carers as it is, isn't it? Let's
It's-
face it.
Labour backbencher Barbara Keeley put forward a private member's bill calling for young carers' needs to be in the bill, that they would be identified in schools, in colleges, and that they should have clear rights. Unfortunately, when that was debated, the Minister Mr Norman Lamb refused to accept the contents of that bill. We, on the Labour side, will be pushing for them. I really hope that we can get some movement out of the government.
I know recently there are other groups organised themselves in Leicestershire, I believe, where they come together to help each other. But, you know, they need more support.
Right at the start of their lives, when they're desperately trying to, you know, they want to do well at school and get on, and we really need to get them support.
What to say, as Liz very well knows, a backbench, a private members' bill raised by an opposition, whichever government or party in place, is not likely to make much progress. But we have a real opportunity here.
I hope so. I hope you're right. Yeah. Okay.